Okay, well, welcome to the Effective Club Meetings webinar. A12 has a number of webinars this month and next month and all the way up to June 16th. So hopefully you signed up for a few of them. This particular one is going to be hopefully helping you have better meetings at your club. My name is Ruth Roberts, and my home club is the Victoria Harbour Lions. I'm a past district governor. I'm also a faculty development graduate and a trainer, and I was a trainer in my work career as well with both Rogers and with Glentel. So I do have some experience behind me in that regards. I'd like to go over our agenda. And first of all, I want us to get acquainted a little bit, and I'll do that with a poll. We're also going to talk about meeting preparation and also managing and the actual meeting discussion and decisions that go through the process. We're going to also cover evaluating each meeting and what sort of follow-up should be done after each meeting. The good news is at the very end, we'll also have some resources available for you. The A12 weekend is, or basically the Lions Learning Weekend, or the Lions Learning Webinar, as it now is known, is basically an opportunity for all of the Lions in our district to attend some training. Most of the training will be on the web this year, the same as it has been the last couple of years due to COVID. However, the club president, club secretary, and club treasurer is going to be in person. We're going to hold those in June. June 4th, both the secretary and the treasurer's training is going to be conducted at the same time in two different rooms in Tiny. And then we will also be conducting on June 16th, the actual president's training, which will be in Alliston, and that goes right from 9 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon, whereas the secretary and treasurer is from 9 in the morning till 3 in the afternoon. Those ones you need to register for. And at the end of this session, I will show you where you can go to actually find the forms for registering. So before we go any further, I would like to actually launch a poll. And if you guys could take a few minutes to answer the 4 questions that are there. So you should see them pop up now. If you could take a few moments and answer all 4 questions, that would be great. Most of them are just choice. I'll give everybody a few minutes to do that. We've got a few more attendees that have signed in as well. That's great. So I'll just wait for all 5 of you to finish the poll. 2 more people need to do it, and that would include Randy and Denise as well. Hopefully they're going to fill out the poll. There we go. All righty. And I'm going to share the results with you right now. And as you can see, for question number 1, is this your first one? We had 1 person that said yes, 4 that said no. So welcome back, the 4 of you, and welcome the brand new person as well. Regarding the size of your club, we have 1 that is between 10 and 20, and the other 4 are all over 20, which is really kind of nice. And asking if you prefer webinar or in person. 1 person wants it in person. The other 4 are quite happy with either way. So they said both. And when we look at the most common problems at club meetings, we had no one say no agenda. I'm so glad to see that. We have 2 out of the 5 saying that the meetings finished late. Excuse me. And 3 are concerned about the clique of friends always sitting together. And 1 also about new members not being involved. Well, the good news, folks, is that we're going to address those situations. So that hopefully will really help in that regards. Okay, oops, we just went through that. All right, just a little bit of statistics that I found when I was searching and preparing for this particular webinar. Ever since 2000, meeting times have actually increased by 10%. And that's not a good thing. Also, the average meeting lasts between 31 to 60 minutes. And most Lions clubs that have good meetings are usually done within that 60-minute period. However, only 2 to 4 people are actually involved in 73% of the meetings. So I'm really hoping that the Lions are part of that other 27%. One other statistics that I found afterwards that I didn't add is that on an average day, there are actually 17 million meetings happening in North America. So by the end of this, hopefully your meetings will be part of the good ones. All right, I'd like to ask you to now take advantage of the Q&A or the question and answer box, which is an icon on the bottom of your screen, and answer this question for me. What problems are due to lack of preparation when it comes to preparing for a meeting? So if you could just type in what you think are the problems that would be caused if you don't do enough preparation. Just go ahead and type them into the answer box and they'll pop up for us. Okay, the first one came up is longer meetings. Yeah, that's true. They will be longer if they're not run properly, if they're not prepared for. We'll just wait for a few more. Anyone at all, you're just type it in, hit enter, it'll pop up. And another one is items that might be missed that need to be discussed. And that is so true. And I'll go through a few others as well. The ones that I sort of are concerned about are things about the meeting being disorganized or unproductive because there's no agenda. And fortunately, in our case, the 5 of you here, you're using agenda, so that's really good. Denise also says that it's a lack of industriousness without an agenda. So, and it needs to be sent out early. You're so right, sending it out early really, really helps. And Randy's also reminding us that sometimes if things aren't organized properly, things get repeated. That's true too. Also, if you're not preparing for your meeting, people like your officers and your committee chairs may not be aware that they're expected to give a particular report, which means they would come unprepared. Sometimes, if you haven't done the proper preparation as well, speakers might get interrupted, or you may have forgotten, you know, the certificate or the gift that you wanted to give as part of a recognition. And sometimes guests are not introduced properly or missed altogether. And when that happens, if there's any potential members in your group at that time, they may not be very impressed. So you're right, there are some things that we need to be concerned about if we don't prepare. So I'm going to talk about preparation. The first thing that we want to talk about is facilities. You want to make sure that where you meet is appropriate in size, convenience, and that it's a safe location for your members to come to. If you have members that use walkers or have problem with stairs, then you need to make sure, if necessary, you have either a ramp so that they're not trying to drag a walker upstairs, or an elevator, which would then really help your members. We already mentioned advance notice, and yes, you need to send information out ahead of time. I know when I was secretary, I sent the minutes out usually about 4 or 5 days after the meeting, hoping that the members would read it and be reminded, oh yeah, I have a report to prepare to give at the next meeting. Or sometimes when I sent the information out, I would send a note with it. Then you want to still send the agenda out ahead of time so people can see it and see if they're on there and they need to be doing something. So these are just nice little ways of reminding members to prepare for their meeting when they come. The information that you can send out, the minutes from the previous meeting, the treasurer could even prepare something ahead of time if they wanted to and send it out. Some committee reports could be sent to the secretary ahead of time so that they could be sent out. This way they can be doing some of the reading ahead of time. So when they show up at the meeting, they have already been through the material. So it's something that will help things go a little quicker with fewer questions. So it does really help. And of course, we already talked about the agenda and the importance. When an agenda is being prepared, it should be based on the discussion that the club president and the club secretary have with the other officers of the board, as well as the committee chairs, so that you have all the information. It's really important that you sort of gather that information to put it on the agenda so you have a good idea of how much time you're going to need at that meeting. For your convenience, and the handouts that I emailed out earlier is an actual sample of an agenda. Something else when we're talking about meeting preparation, it's really great if you could have an attendance sheet that somebody could just tick off as the people walk in the door. Some clubs give that task to the secretary. Other clubs give it to the lion tamer who looks after setting up the flags and the gavel and the gong. When I was president, I gave it to my membership chair. This way, the membership chair could see who was coming to the meetings and who wasn't. And again, I put in a small sample of an attendance sheet that you can use where you can put the person's name down one column and the dates of the meeting across the top so that you can see, you know, are they missing 2 and 3 meetings in a row? You know, do we need to call them to find out what's happening so that they can start to come back? So it's again, something that you need to think about when you're thinking about the attendance. A lot of times we have guests at our meetings, so we need to make sure that they're introduced properly. If you have somebody greeting people at the door, you want to make sure that person greets the guests, make sure that they get the name and the position and the reason for them being there. That information then needs to be shared with both the secretary and the president. Secretary so that they can record it, the president so they can do the proper introduction if the president's doing it. If it's a speaker, and your speaker program chair is the one that actually invited the person, sometimes they will be the one to do the introduction, which is great. However, if it's someone else that's going to do the introduction, do me a favor and make sure you ask them to do that introduction well in advance. Not everybody's comfortable doing that. So if they're not comfortable, give them an opportunity to say no and ask someone else. If they do, you know, want to do it, great. Giving them that extra time allows them to actually meet the person and get some information so they can do a really great introduction. And of course, recognition is also something that happens a lot of time. I know Marjorie Lewis, when we were talking about her year as president, she always made sure she started off with giving somebody some recognition. Recognition is really appreciated when it's done as soon as possible after the event that they're being thanked for. So yes, I know the presidents like to wait till the end of the year and do a big thank you to everybody, but in between, you know, the start of the year and that big thank you, you still want to be thanking people as time goes on. So try to make sure that you prepare that recognition ahead of time. You have the certificate ready, it's been signed, it's been framed, or whatever the case may be, so that when the time comes at the meeting, it can go a lot smoother. Now, we also need to deal with the facilities meeting discussion and decisions. So At the club meeting, you really need to use facilitating skills when there's a lot of discussion happening. One of the best things to do is to use the Roberts Rules of Order. That way, you're able to make sure that you're consistent in a set of rules, and those rules will help you make sure that the meeting keeps moving along. It'll also make sure that you're being fair to everyone and everyone has an opportunity to have their say. So the Robert Rules of Order, if you're not familiar with them, there's all kinds of books you can buy that will give you some information. And we also, from time to time, put on a training session for it. When you are dealing with a motion or a decision that has to be made, you want to make sure that you're dealing with that particular motion and stating it clearly. You know, somebody moves, somebody else seconds, there's discussions. Before the actual vote, you want to make sure that it's read out by the secretary or that the president repeats it so that it's clear in everybody's mind what they're voting on. That's really important, and it'll make sure that there aren't any serious discussions afterwards about being confused on that. You also, as a person who's managing the meeting, want to make sure that the discussion stays on topic. There's some members in our Lions that love to hear themselves talk. And when that happens, you know, sometimes things can get off track pretty quick. So it's up to you to sort of manage that and make sure that people stay focused. When you do that, you need to you know, sort of be aware of how you're doing it. If time is limited, look at your agenda. If you're finding you're falling behind, you're not going to be finished in the time slot that you had appointed yourself, then table things that can be tabled. If you need to, you know, push a couple of things to the next meeting because you're not going to have time to get them done properly at this meeting, and it's not going to affect the actual event or whatever, then by all means, table it. That will then help you get to the other important things that can't be tabled that are on your agenda. And as much as you want to rush things through sometimes, it's still important that you allow everyone to have their point of view expressed. However, when they stand up to express their particular point of view, make sure it's on the topic that you're dealing with at the time, and make sure that they understand that other people need to have a say as well. So you don't want to rush them, but at the same time, you want to make sure everybody gets an opportunity. So when you're going to be using these facilitating skills, you need to understand that the best and the strongest one that you want to develop is active listening. Active listening is a great facilitation skill. What you're going to do whenever possible when someone is speaking is you need to listen, concentrate, and focus on what they're saying so that you can make sure that you understand it all. If there's a question or a misunderstanding, you need to clarify that. You can do that with a question, or you can do that by paraphrasing what you believe was said. And by doing that, you're not only clarifying it for yourself, but you're going to clarify it for everyone else that's in the meeting. So don't be afraid to do that. Active listening is really important. You need to hear it out. You need to ask questions if necessary and clarify. You may, from time to time, notice that not everybody's participating. If you remember the stats that I read out of 73% of the meeting, only 2 to 4 people are actually, you know, actively involved in the decision making. Well, in that case, you want to really look around and read the body language of your members as much as you can. You want to encourage everybody to participate. If somebody sits back in the back corner and they're not voting, they're not saying anything, they're not participating in the discussion, you have to be careful, because you know that's some of the first signs of somebody that's thinking about leaving. So you want to involve as many of your I was going to say employees, as your members as you can. So ask them a question. If someone's said something, you can say, George, you know, I see you sitting there really concentrating on this. What's your opinion? You know, how do you feel about this? So that it pulls somebody who is quiet and gets them involved a little bit. Anytime you're going to do that, by pulling somebody in for a discussion or by reminding them to stay focused on the particular topic that you're dealing with, you need to use tact and diplomacy. We don't always come with a lot of that at a meeting when we're in a hurry or if we've had a hard day, but we need to have some packed away in a bag somewhere and take it with us. We need tact, we need diplomacy when we're dealing with people. And the people in the room are expecting whoever is chairing that meeting to be managing the participants' behaviors. Because sometimes there's disruption happening, sometimes there's side conversations happening, sometimes there's a disagreement between people. You know, as the chair, you need to be aware of that. And again, reading body language as well as using active listening skills, you need to deal with that. So I'm going to talk about 4 of the most common ones that we find in a meeting that if we don't manage them, they can make a meeting go a lot longer than it should. And one of the first ones is the overeager participant. This is the person who has lots of ideas and they're valuable and they're good. And well, some of them are not so good, but most of them are good. And you feel, wow, this is great. You know, here's a member that's really excited. However, if you don't manage them properly, what happens is they take up a huge chunk of your time, and we can't afford to have that happen. You need to be aware that an overeager participant, you don't want to dash them down to the point where they stop sharing with you, but you, again, using tact and diplomacy, but we need them to understand that we need to get the agenda done on a timely basis, and we need to allow other people to have a say as well. And then you have the person who monopolizes the discussion, where you've got somebody that made the motion and seconded, and now you're in the discussion stage, and this person stands up and they're quite opinionated about it. Somebody else tries to say something and they talk over top of them or whatever, and to the point where this is not healthy. You need, again, to use tact and diplomacy, but you need to let the person know that you've heard them. Thank you for your opinion. I appreciate that. However, we do have other people that need to share their opinion as well, and we do have a time limit. So we need to get out of here at a certain time. So if I could just ask you to hold any other comments until everyone else has had at least one chance to speak, then you can have your second chance. Believe it or not, when I've done that, by the time it got around to them for the second time, they went, oh, it's okay, somebody already said it. So it sort of really helped a lot. So keep that in mind when you're dealing with somebody who's trying to monopolize all the time. Then the silent person, which is similar to the quiet one that I talked about earlier. This person, they could be sitting there thinking about, why am I here? Like, I'm not really participating. I'm not really doing anything. Maybe I don't need to come to these meetings. So you need to watch that. Or they could be just really shy and really quiet. However, they have probably just as good an idea or a suggestion as anyone else. So you need to, again, pull them in softly. You don't want to drag them in. You don't want to scare them off. And it can be just through an easy question. Gee, Susan, I know in your other organization, you've done a lot of these type of projects. Are we missing something? Is there something you can add that would help us sort of move this forward a little bit? Doing it in a soft way so that they can share a little bit or they can share a lot, depending on what they're comfortable with. So allow them to do that. And the last one is the side conversation or the off-topic comments. And when these things happen, they're disruptive, not only in making noise, but they're annoying the other members around them. And it really can sometimes then take people off the topic and you end up sort of straying. So it's important to ask those individuals to cooperate, to stay on topic, and to help you get the agenda completed on time. One of the things I did as president, I actually had a board meeting, my very first board meeting. And what I did was I asked each board member to be a role model when it came to behavior in the meetings. And what I meant by that was, A, they were not to start any side conversations. And B, when someone did, if they were sitting close to that person who was doing the side conversation, just to put their hand on the person's shoulder. You don't have to say anything. You don't even have to have eye contact. Just a hand on the shoulder usually stops the person mid-sentence, and they'll realize that they're being disruptive or interrupting the speaker. So it's a little thing, but it does work. And again, that allows you to use tact and diplomacy. Here's some more meeting stats. If you do use an agenda, which most of us do, it does save 80% of time. And 37% of the meetings are using agendas. With Lions, I think that's a lot higher. And I think the reason for that is because of the fact that we are very organized people. However, 73% of people multitask in meetings. And I've seen it myself. I'm sure you all have too. Somebody sitting there, click, 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 click on their phone. Other people do multitasking a different way, where their mind is doing the multitasking. Geez, I wonder, where I'm going to have lunch tomorrow. Or, geez, I promised so-and-so I would drop something off and I haven't done that yet. Maybe I can do that on the way home. So their mind is starting to wander. The good news is our minds are very fantastic. We can multitask. We really can. Women have proved that in particular, but we really can. All people can multitask. The trouble is it's what percentage are you giving each task? And at the beginning, you're going to be concentrating, 0.75% on what's being said by the person, and the other 25% is going to every once in a while think about something that you should be doing or have done or need to do or whatever the case may be. However, if the meeting is not interesting, or if it's not moving forward the way it should, that 75-25 will start to shift. And when that happens, that person is not listening to you as much and they may miss some things. So keep in mind, multitasking is good, but only when it's working towards getting the meeting done. Okay, I would like to ask the group, and again, you can use the question and answer section of what success stories do you have of using some positive meeting management skills? What have you seen a trainer do, or a president, or district governor, anybody that stood up in front of a group to talk? What were some of the things that they did that really seemed to help the meeting move along and make it a success? Any comments at all?
Good evening, Lion Ruth. It's Jamie Jones.
Oh,
sorry for joining you late. I just want to say that in the question and answer, Denise Naughton had a comment on your last page of your PowerPoint about to be neutral and stay unbiased when controlling meeting, which is a very good point. And,
It is. And thank you, Denise, for that. That is so great. Who you're hearing from right now is our Global Leadership Chair. Jamie, thank you so much for organizing all of these training sessions. It's really appreciated. And I know that you've put a lot of effort into helping us get the information out about all of these. And I thank you kindly.
Well, thank you for hosting. We're very fortunate in our district to have such amazing faculty such as yourself, Ruth, and we're very grateful to you for covering this really important topic. And effective meetings, when we think about membership retention, when meetings stop being interesting and effective, people stop coming, and when they stop coming to meetings, they perhaps stop being a Lion. So this is the glue that keeps everybody engaged, and it is so important to be able to have effective meetings. So this is a really, really important topic, and I'm glad it's being recorded. So, because not everybody's perfect, and I'm sure they can all pick up a couple tips from this. So thank you again, Ruth.
Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna move on. And the next area that I want to talk about is board and committee meetings. Some clubs actually make decisions at the club meetings only. Other clubs have board meetings and or committee meetings where they do most of the discussion and make decisions and or recommendations, and then bring those to the club for the final say. So the club members aren't sort of being ignored. They still have an opportunity to have a say. The difference is instead of having that full committee meeting within a regular meeting, which takes up a big chunk of the meeting, what you have is a committee meeting where all the long discussion can go into detail and sort everything out and come up with a recommendation. And just the recommendation then is brought back to the club. So it's something to think about if your club today does not have board meetings or committee meetings, because they can be really, really helpful. Some of the things that we found, the clubs that do, is that the decisions and the participation in the board meeting and or committee meetings, the people that are there because they want to be and they're interested in that particular committee or event that's taking place. So it helps when people are interested, because then that multitasking is going to work towards the meeting. We also find that people that have these board meetings and committee meetings are much more efficient because you're in a smaller group, and that helps them to go through the meeting rules and regulations and handle that a lot easier. And also, by going through that process of having these meetings separate from the regular meeting, is that it will allow the regular meeting then to be shortened or to its regular time. And it also at that time allows more socializing. I found when I was on a committee, I got to meet and understand or learn about the members more than I would in just a regular meeting. In a regular meeting, you know, the talk is very limited to whoever's up at the chair. Whereas in a committee meeting, there's more discussion. So I got to understand people and learn about people a lot better in a committee meeting than I ever would in a regular meeting. Now, when the meeting is over, you need to ask yourself a couple of questions. And I remember my very, very first meeting as a charter president of a brand new Lions Club. I approached my two vice presidents and asked them to observe what how I behaved during the meeting, and then afterwards said to them, we'll stay behind afterwards and then we can discuss it. So the meeting took place, and being my very first meeting, I was nervous and I made some mistakes. So I thought, oh, okay, now I need to sit down with my vice presidents and talk about what I'm going to do next time. So I sat down and I did the things that I've been taught to do and asked them open-ended questions. Okay, so how did I do? And what were some of my strengths? What were some of my weaknesses? And the two of them, did the flower thing. Oh, you were great. You were wonderful. It was so nice. And, thank goodness you're up there. And I went, whoa, that's not good. And they kind of looked at me kind of funny. And I said, if I go based on what you just told me, our meetings are never going to get better. I'm not going to try and improve myself. And things are probably going to get worse because I don't think I have to do anything. I don't have to change anything. I don't have to try to get better. And they kind of gave me a strange look. And I said to them, I'm serious. I want honest feedback. If it hurts me, I'll just bite my tongue and not say anything. But I need you to be honest, because I know I did at least 3 things wrong in that meeting tonight. So they hemmed and hawed, and they shared a couple of things. And I said, okay, we're going to do this again at the next meeting. So next meeting, when we sat down, they then gave me some honest feedback, because I made sure that I made at least one mistake, if not a couple more. Actually, I ended up with 2 or 3 that night again, and they shared that with me. So it did help. And I know for myself, I usually ask myself those questions at the end of most meetings. And I listed the questions in the handout that I sent to you. And basically, they're simple questions. Did we have good attendance? Did we start and end on time? Did I get all the items on my agenda covered? Were there any guests or potential members that that needed to be introduced? And, you know, did they feel warmly welcomed? Did most of the clubs participate in the meeting? Was there any discussions or decisions that, you know, maybe not everybody understood? Was I able to manage any challenges of conflicts that came up? Did the speaker have enough time? Did the speaker speak within the time? And, you know, did I do any recognition? And if I did I do it properly? So those are the sort of questions I can ask myself, or I can get somebody I trust to ask me or to share with me if I did or didn't do those things to help me improve for the next meeting. So we need to evaluate each meeting we do, because each meeting is different. So you need to keep that in mind. So those questions are in there if you want to ever use them. And now comes the biggie, the follow-up. And this is something a lot of club presidents, committee chairs don't do enough of, and that's following up after a meeting. And I mean, I don't mean just immediately after, I mean as time goes on as well. So my question to you is, what sort of problems could come up if we don't do proper follow-up? And if you want to share verbally, put your hand up and we'll make sure that we unmute you, or you can use the question and answer box again. So what kind of problems could we run into if we don't do follow-up? I'll give you a few minutes to type in whatever you want.
I'm not seeing any hands raised.
Okay,
Before we ask somebody,
go ahead, Tanis. You should be able to speak now, Tanis.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Oh, great. Okay. So one of the big things I think, you know, I'm fairly new to the Lions, but I think what's very important is as a guest coming in to feel that you're welcome there and that you belong. And having that follow-up really makes it feel like your presence was noticed and appreciated. And if you don't get that, you don't tend to feel that it's that important that you were there. And I think that's very detrimental to the you know, ability for the club to remain with high numbers. It tends to dwindle down very quickly when you don't have a lot of new members joining and feeling like they are contributing.
Absolutely. And, you know, especially if it's a person who's just there as a guest and thinking about coming, if you don't follow up, you know, chances of them coming are going to be pretty slim.
and we have Sheila Webb.
Sheila, you're still muted. You'll need to unmute yourself.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. Great. Very good point, Janice. Thank you. I think that if I don't follow up on things, that I lose my credibility. If I tell somebody I'm going to do something and I don't do it, the credibility is just like gone out the window, and no one's going to believe me the next time. So I think it's a huge credibility issue.
Good point. That's so true. And we rely on people to keep their word and do what they say they're going to do. Anyone else? Any other comments?
Randy Hargrave has his hand raised.
Go ahead, Randy.
I just think if you don't follow up, when you assign somebody a job or something, right, they, it might get put on the back burner in their lives. So to keep things happening, you have to, maybe give these people a little prod to get things done, right? So you have to follow up with assignments to people, right?
True. Great. Yeah. Jamie, do you see any others?
No, that was it. Other than Denise had a comment about when you were talking about getting feedback from meetings, that there's no chance for improvement without debriefing and follow-up.
So true. So some of the other things that I was thinking of was projects won't get completed if you don't follow up with the chair people. Some people need that little sort of push of, the meeting's coming up in a couple of weeks, how are you doing on this project? Do you need some help? Sometimes they do, sometimes it's just that call, that phone call to them or that email to them will be enough to push them into getting it done. And if we don't follow up, decisions are going to get postponed repeatedly. Community program presenters will become skeptical about your club ever supporting them. And new ideas never get discussed or adopted, and new members won't feel involved. So all of these things are some of the sort of issues that can happen if you don't do follow up. So to follow up after a meeting, if you handed out a proposal, or if you're dealing with a proposal and there's not enough information for the club to make a decision, you need to assign somebody or a committee, an individual or a committee, to actually go and get that additional information and then to bring it back to the next meeting. If a committee head stands up to give a report and it's not a complete report, there's information missing, you need to follow up with them. You need to say, we still need to know what the expenses were, or we still need to know how many tickets we sold, or whatever information was missing. You still need to follow up on that. You need to make sure people are accountable to do the things they're supposed to do, and to help them by reminding them, okay, I still need that information. Even though you gave your report, it's not complete, I still need the information. If a presentation was done and they're asking for money, you obviously don't want to be doing a motion and a discussion with that person sitting there listening to you. So obviously that is something that should be postponed to the next meeting. So you need to make sure, again, that actually both yourself and your secretary should be documenting these things to make sure that they do show up on the agenda for the next meeting. And sometimes we just don't have enough time to get everything done on our agenda. Things happen, long discussions, whatever the case may be. When that happens, you may have to table some items until the next meeting. Again, you need to keep track of those so that you don't lose track of them, and they can then be brought up in the appropriate time and place. This is where you can find some additional resources. However, basically, there's 2 documents that go with that. One's the actual survey that you give each of your members, and the administrative guide on how to deal with it. The nice thing about how are your ratings, it asks you questions about what your expectations are on certain things about your club. And then in the second half, it asks you, how is your club doing on those expectations? And that helps you look to see if there's a big gap in between. Because if you expect, on a scale of 1 to 10, if you expect the club to be doing something at an 8, and when you actually say, okay, how are we doing on this particular thing? And you've got a score of 2, well, there's a big gap there, and you need to address that. So it's a great tool to help you sort of stand back and look at the bigger picture of, what do we expect and how are we doing on those expectations? And then you'll know where to focus your energy. Blueprint for a Stronger Club is another document that you can obtain from Lions International. And Your Club, Your Way. The old style of club where, if you miss 3 meetings, we kicked you out. Those days are long gone. We are a different, more current, more advanced organization now. So we allow a lot more flexibility. We allow a lot more individuality. So if you want your club to meet at a restaurant and have dinner, great. If you want your club to meet online only, that's okay too. So this particular document helps you understand what sort of things you can do to maybe ask your club members, are we still okay doing this? If we're not, then maybe we need to change. And of course, there's some meeting management courses that you can take online. And I'm not sure if everyone's aware, but every Lion has a Lion account. If you have it and you've used it, you can go in there and I'll show you then to go into the Learn. But if you haven't used it ever, you can register for it. Just click on the green register button and it will require your email address as well as your member number. And if you don't know your member number, your secretary can get that for you. And once you log in, you get the member portal that comes up. And the one that I've got circled in red is the Learn one. When you click on that, it shows you what type of training and courses are coming up at Lions International, the different institutes that they do. But there's also a section on local training. When you click on that one, you will then see a list of the types of training, the webinars that we have, as well as the in-person training that we have coming up. So, and this is the objectives again of what we're hoping to cover. We covered preparation, facilitating skills, evaluating, follow-up, and recognizing meeting improvements. But this is the last screen I want to leave you with. This is a list of the upcoming webinars. Please register for them. The dates are there. They're all on a Thursday evening. They all start at 7:30. Some of them are really new and different. They're not, you know, the usual stuff that we have. Childhood cancer is new. The hunger food one's new. Diversity is new. Accessibility is also new. So these are some brand new courses that we would love for you to sign up for. And as I mentioned earlier, the in-person training is available on those dates, times, and locations. Those, again, you need to register for. So when you go into that section that I talked about in Learn, there's a list of all the dates and times. You can click on the links there. Also, if you go to our A12 Lions webpage, under events, if you click there, you'll also be able to get to the forms to fill out and then send those forms in. We need you to register for those 3 dates because we need to have enough food for you and we also need to have enough handout material for you. So if you're gonna come as a president, secretary, or treasurer, please register early so we can get things organized. That is basically the training that I was presenting for you tonight. Are there any questions, comments, concerns that you would like to share? Put your hand up and we will unmute you. Or you can use the Q&A box again. And thank you, Sheila, for the nice comment. Anybody, any questions, any concerns? If you have any ideas or suggestions regarding future courses that you would like to see, please let us know. We are always open and willing to listen to that. Somebody's got their hand up. Oh, it's Claire. Go ahead, Claire.
Hi, everybody. I was just wondering, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I was just wondering about the last course, the last webinar. I missed it. I believe it was on Club Commerce.
Oh, the
And-
e-commerce one?
Yeah, I tried to go onto our learning site there to see if I could find it because I know it was recorded, but I couldn't find it. Just wondering where I can find it.
It's, I answered your question, Claire, and yes, it is. It's on the District A12 YouTube channel, and it's under LLW Webinars 2022. It's on, it was uploaded last week. So
Excellent.
there's 4 up there, all 4, and this one will be uploaded as well very soon.
Yeah, that was the only one I've missed so far. So, okay. I'll
Ruth,
do that.
Ruth, I just made a couple comments and while you were summing up here, and I can't stress enough how important a topic this is, because when you think about it, all of our time is important. And when you think about attracting younger members, nobody wants to go to a long, drawn out, boring meeting. And we spend so much time trying to attract new members, and we lose so many members every year because they're tired. They're tired of long, boring, uneventful disrespectful meetings. So I put 6 comments on here about the important characteristics, and they need to be relevant. They need to be well planned. They need to be inclusive, and all this stuff has already been covered. They need to be respectful. That is so important. And you talked about that. They also need to be time sensitive, and probably most importantly, they need to be positive. And if we can keep those things in mind and even tick most of those boxes, it'll keep people interested and feel like they're not wasting their time. Because when they start to feel like they're wasting their time, they stop coming.
Thank you, Jamie. That's so true. I've always believed that the most precious thing to volunteers and Lions in particular is time. So we don't want to waste their time. We want to honor it, and we want to make the best use of it whenever we can.
We have a comment from Tracy Stevens, says, thank you very much. We had our first ever in-person meeting last month. It was great and well attended. I'm looking forward to more great meetings. Some were able to log onto Zoom. So yes, we're hoping to, we just had our district convention last weekend, and the first one in 3 years. So we're hoping to do a lot of more in-person meetings. It's so much more important and meaningful to see people face to face rather than in Zoom.
Great. If there aren't any other questions, comments, or concerns, then I thank you all very much. Oh, I do have one other question. How helpful was it getting the handouts ahead of time? Is that something we need to do on a more regular basis, or?
I think it's important because people can peruse through it, and maybe there's some focal points that they may want to ask some questions about in advance.
That was my thing when I said I hope it was all a way to entice people to come.
And Tracy Stevens says handouts were good, thank you. And Claire says, thank you, Ruth. I like that touch for sure. Yes, handouts are great from tennis. And Denise says the handouts earlier were a great idea. Thank you. So
Good.
Kudos all around.
Great. Well, thank you all very much. Have yourselves a great evening. Stay safe, stay healthy.
Thank you.